Well, Blossom is a book that's really about the attempts Scottish people have made to try and make their communities work. And that's in the face of problems with landowners very often, because we have got some of the biggest sporting estates in Europe where local people can never get their hands on land. And also we have the largest local councils in Europe, which means even if you get to the stage where you can get land, you might never get planning permission. And in general, the whole template of your life is that those people who make decisions are never you. They're never near you. You never know them. You don't recognize them, and that's normal. Now, the book is also making comparisons with the Nordic countries particularly, but most of the rest of Europe, and is trying to show that it's not normal, we are weird. Scotland in many respects is weird as having the largest units of local government, and some of the sickest people, and maybe these things are connected. So I'm just exploring the structure of our everyday life, because people throw themselves an awful lot at the problems. People are willing to try and put lots of energy in to fix their own communities. But a lot of the time it's a losing battle because the structures are making it almost impossible for them to really succeed very easily. Well, I think if we got back to where we used to be, I mean, it used to be that little towns around Scotland had their own councils, and that was probably the right size. Now, unfortunately, it wasn't at the right time. It was at the time in the 1930s when basically the great and the good ran everything. So for a lot of the time, local councils were actually run by the Duke of Roxburgh or the Duke of Buccleuch or those and such as those. It wasn't really very democratic. Perhaps that's why people don't have the warm and fuzzies when you talk a lot about very local parish councils, because it just didn't really seem to be power to the people. But I think now it would be, and that would be the best democratic solution to a lot of this, because otherwise people are basically pouring their energies into community functions and community projects, which is terrific. But they're all reliant on getting money from the state year after year after year. They're very often trying to set up services which are also being produced by the council, but they just don't produce them very well. And we're double dunting. We're putting our energies in twice, once into the ballot box and to councils which are too large, and then once into our everyday lives to make it all work. How about bring them together? That's what I would like to see. Well, I'd hope that they wouldn't just come out and vote more. I'd hope they would be the councillors. I mean, I go to groups like this of people who are prepared to spend their extra time and their spare time to try and make communities work. They would be councillors in any normal European country. It's only in Scotland where you end up with these folk as the eternal volunteers until they burn out. And they will. Everybody has a limited amount of time where they can put into these things. So I imagine that if you knew the kind of people that everybody does know generally in a community, and you saw them getting into positions of power in a council that you could go and visit without taking 4 buses, I think you probably would turn out and vote. Well, in other countries it isn't so important to own them because the general backdrop of people's lives is not as contested as it is here. I mean, here, unless you do own something absolutely, you will find some other authority somewhere will eventually trump your ideas, your ambitions, your plans, and you won't be able to do what you want. You get lots of situations where there are, for example, libraries shut down, or post offices, or local schools. All of these things can just terminate the life of a community, a small village, for example. It might be the people in that community want to go the extra mile to keep it open, but they can't. It might be simply trying to get land to put a shop. If you don't have a shop in a community, that's also often the tin lid. Well, there's very often people with the time and inclination, but they can't get the land to build a shop. Or if they do, they can't get planning permission because some larger council miles away has decided that that's not in the local plan. Right, all these things are squashing the energy of people, and people just have to be able to see plans come to fruition. It's like I lived in your room and stopped every single thing you tried to do, even to where you wanted to place a flower pot. That's the degree of micromanagement we've got of people, and it's just got to stop. Well, I don't think the SNP have a very good track record on recognising the importance of localism, and this is a message they're going to have to get. At the moment, they don't want to upset any more apple carts than the one that they've already got running. So there's no chance, really, I think, of anything very dramatic happening before the referendum. But I think after that, a lot of people will be putting pressure on to say this doesn't work, not least the Convention of Scottish Local Authorities, who surprisingly have come up with a very bold report talking about the dismantling of democracy over 50 years in Scotland. So this is, if you like, the turkeys voting for Christmas. When you begin to get that happening, you know that change is going to be round the corner.